And so if we're grasping and going, where to go? Where to go? I want it back. Then you're still on that same wheel. You're like, okay, different things show up. And sometimes the emptiness is this really scary, absolute non-existent. There's no one, nothing, never will be, never was. Slap in the face. And sometimes it's more and more this exquisite peace where there's just, a big hug from God. And that's everything.
Welcome to the Endless Possibilities Podcast, where the journey of spiritual awakening and energy healing unfolds.
Hello and welcome to the Endless Possibilities Podcast. My name is Garrett and I'm very happy to be back again, bringing you another episode with another incredible guest. Today I am introducing Karen Thorson. I'm just going to give her a quick introduction. Karen grew up in Minneapolis, attended higher education in Atlanta and is now in Colorado. She began studying martial arts at the age of 12 for its physical intensity and discipline, and became an award-winning competitive Taekwondo martial artist, receiving a black belt at the age of 17. When she was 16, she started seeing energies. Karen realized she was crazy, or there was more to life than what could be seen by the naked eye. Not knowing how to adapt to the unusual skills, she attended a prestigious liberal arts college, Macalester College in St. Paul's, Minnesota, where she studied maths and sciences. Karen is forever grateful to the many people whose trust, faith, and courage were the first examples for her on how to really live. Beginning in 1985, during her search for meaning, Karen began studying schools of healing and spiritual philosophy to understand the mind and the body and their essential integration. Karen has had the great fortune to have studied many ancient wisdoms and alternative healing approaches to health, wellness, and spiritual growth. They have all helped her discover her abilities and talents. Full of faith but lacking clarity and career purpose, Karen dropped out of school, got married, and explored employment options for some years, working in a variety of fields, including photography, coaching, bakery, appliances sales, video sales, to security guard. Karen was finally inspired by the ability of network spinal analysis to change people's lives. Karen entered chiropractic school in 1993 and studied to become a doctor of chiropractic. Karen has learned more through her successes and failures in personal relationships than from all of the classes she has taken combined. These days, Karen is happy beyond her wildest imagination. In addition to building a business over the last 15 years, she is the mother of 2 children. She enjoys friends, photography, travel, fine cuisine, body work, wellness, teaching, learning, tattoos, spirituality, reading, and nature. Karen, welcome.
Thank you. It was so
Yeah,
fun. So glad to be back.
yeah, we had a lot of fun on the last one, and I think again, we started it off saying that we were going to talk about all the stages or the layers and locations is the language you use. And we got sidetracked again and we got kind of more into the embodiment side. So we sat down and we talked after the podcast and we said we'd come back and we'd really kind of go deep into the locations and the layers and you're an expert on it, right? You're explain to me what you do. You're part of the Jeffrey Martin's.
So, so Jeffrey did a year-long mentor class, and I took that class. And then when it ended, it was actually at that same time that he wrapped up his research of roughly 20 years and doing the finder's course month after month after month and all the data. And he felt that they'd really gotten as far as you could with that and learned everything you could to maximize that program. And so he turned it over to a nonprofit that's running it now. So the class is still going and it's still happening and whatnot. But I became part of the POK, the Perfectly Okay alumni community, which is huge. It's whatever, 5,000 people or something. And there are meetings all across the world and of all different types and different traditions. And so I have been a speaker on the podcast type of thing that they have going. And I started teaching a class on the locations and layers. So I called it embodied fluidity because it is embodiment that to me makes it so much richer and so much deeper and so much more meaningful. But most people don't just get to one kind of awakening and then just sit there for 20 years. We have now such a plethora of wonderful people like you and all the podcasts and all the teachers and all the books and all the YouTube and all the retreats.
Yeah, it's huge, right?
Huge,
Yeah.
huge. So people are having all these experiences and then going home and then next weekend do another experience and then watch a podcast and read a book and they're totally lost. And the system is just disorganizing and running people through the Martin matrix, which is just one map. It's not any better, any worse than any other map, but it's a something. So you can kind of organize your thoughts and see what happened and be able to have a way to mentally process what's going on. And it's easier if you bring your mind with, if you bring your body with, if you're not just floating out in the energy.
Okay. And the map is not to be confused for the terrain, right?
Right. It's
This, yeah. So some
yeah,
people get totally caught up in
yeah.
like the descriptions, the mental concepts around awakening, and sometimes can actually confuse intellectual understanding for an actual the lived experience.
Right. And it's understandable, but it's not very helpful. And it tends to kind of pull you off going deeper into the real experience of having, I was just talking about this last night with somebody. It's not about any experience. The human experience is experiences. And it's the highs and the lows and the together and the alone and all the things and all the experiences you could possibly have. An awakening is everything that's not that. It's before thought. It's the gap between the experiences. It's the thread that ties it all together. It's everything and nothing. And so it's so hard to describe because it's not a thing.
Yeah.
It's not an experience where you like it began and then it had a middle and then it ended and it was discrete and separate. Awakening is everything that's not a human experience.
And it cannot be understood by the mind, right?
Yeah.
You can't imagine what it can be like. You can't like I mean I just see people go in my opinion, and as soon as I hear in my opinion, that's not it.
Right. Right. Is the minute you start, I joke in class, you start to mime and make sounds, and you're like, well, because you just can't articulate it. So you start trying and it's cute as heck. But, maybe you repeat yourself. That's another one. They'll go, it was, it
It was
was.
yeah. Yeah. And
And you're like,
in
yeah,
the
that was
was
it.
you've lost it, right? Because it's put in past tense.
That's true too. But there was that glimpse when you start getting out of the mind.
Hi guys, I just have a quick favor to ask of those who are not already subscribed. Could you please do us a small favor and help promote our channel by hitting that subscribe button? The more people that we have subscribed to the channel, the bigger we grow, the bigger the guests we can have on. So please do us a favor and hit subscribe. Now back to the show with Karen. Okay, so we're going to pick it all apart, right?
Yeah.
Starting with ignorance, right? Ignorance, totally identified with the body, with the mind, being a separate individual, believing you were born, believing that you will die. Let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about 99.99% of people on the planet believe that they are the body, the mind.
Yeah. And so that's the cultural story. That's the illusion that we buy into to be part of this grand experiment. So here we are, thinking that this is solid. And then we learn in physics that there's this little bit of mass and a whole bunch of emptiness and some electron way out there. And this is mostly not solid. And it's like, what the heck, man? Seems solid.
Yeah,
And so we buy in.
yeah.
Yeah.
And and then the ego, right? The ego is a part of our intellect that seems to want to keep a part of us safe in some way, right? It wants to protect us. It wants to push away what it perceives as negative, and it wants to pull in what it wants, like profitable, me and mine, and that seems to be this little part of our mind. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Karen? The
So, so I pondered this a lot this year, and really, to me, when you go beneath the safety aspect, that's the story the mind is saying, I'm doing this to be safe. But what it is the core separation. So here we are in our non-duality, in our awakening, with unity, eh, wonderfulness, 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 wonderfulness. If you wanted to experience creation, you have to have separation. For there to be a me, to create a you or a now or anything of any kind, there needs to be contrast. So we start having this little bit of separation, and then a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So we have this form, this physical embodiment. All right, great. We're physically embodied. Now we can really create. Well, there's a lot of complexity to actually wielding energy and having intent and all these different things. So we have more and more and more and more and more layers of separation until somewhere along the line we forgot that it was just a dream. It's just an illusion that we created to have creation, to have some experience. And then we believed the experience was true, and now we're a little bit stuck. And so coming back out of the veil, veil after veil after veil of all these things. Oh, my body's separate. Emotions mean something. My thoughts are important. I have a separate soul, all these different layer after layer, and millions of people agreeing in the same thing. So we're reinforced like, oh yeah, it's separate. Well, now we've built up, well, now it's scary to be together. The whole thing kind of flipped, that we don't really want to merge with someone. So I'm going to stay safe by being separate and in control and understand what's going on, all these mental characteristics
and
as if that was the bigger real picture.
Okay, so the first thing that pops into my head is it's not safe because we used to be hunted by animals, right? Attacked by opposite villages. They would come and attack us. So, like,
Yeah, it did suck.
it sucked, right?
I remember a lot of past lives. That did suck.
So I mean, that obviously has some part to play, right? There's an intelligence in our cells that's been passed from generation down to generation, and it's something in us, right? Our cells have consciousness. Out there is danger, animals, people wielding swords, axes. That obviously plays a big part in why we want to keep ourselves separate and safe from others.
Well, so here's now the tricky part. Am I looking at it from a human point of view? Am I looking at it from what I call a bottom up, looking at it from the physical plane into the emotional, into the mental, into the energetic? Or am I looking at it from wholeness down? If I'm looking at it from bottom up, which is the cultural story, it is the felt sense
Yeah.
experience when you are Are you, when you're playing your role in the game? Yes. Then I don't want someone to punch me in the face. That would be bad. I don't want that. It would hurt, and I would rather stay separate from that kind of experience. Now, if I'm looking at it from a top down, when I'm really sitting in the wholeness, there is no birth, there is no death, there is no problem. Some experiences I like better than others, but what am I trying to keep safe? So I had this experience, and I can then breathe out of this body and into the next and do something else. Just take off this meat suit and put on a new one. There's no problem. There's no fear. It's okay. But in order to really have that as a felt sense experience of peace, you really have to feel the oneness or remember the past lives, or in some way, shape, or form, have it not just be an idea, because then the body's still, the body's still in charge.
Yeah.
When the oneness is in charge, the body, there's one point I was in a car accident. I just watched the car driving up, and I was at a red light. There was nowhere I could go. I was on a bridge. There was nowhere to pull off. And I just watched it come up and smash into me. There was no fear. It just something that happened.
Okay, so you can't tell someone this though, right? I can't go to someone who's full of fear. Don't worry, you don't die. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's still something in that person that's totally identified as the body, as the mind, and they fear death, right? They want to.
Of course, it's reasonable. So if you look at the permanent atoms, you look at karma, you have all your DNA that has all the tension of your parents and your grandparents. So all of that energy is wired in.
Yeah.
So you are having a felt sense experience of so many things, thousands and thousands of things, all your generations, the people around you, all of your past lives, all of these things. And the mind has really no ability to sort all that out. Unless you're really, really awake to go, oh yeah, I was burned at the stake. That's why I'm flinching with this flame coming at me. Huh, cute as heck. But that's an awful lot of awareness to be able to pull threads from other time-space dimensions into the moment. So what do you feel? You feel what's in the now. And your body has a lot of opinions about what it likes and doesn't like. Classic network story, classic story. So say you were 3 years old and in your car seat in the back of the car, and your mom is in a car accident. And the guy who hit you had a great big beard and this red shirt and had way too much cologne on. And he was concerned, and oh my God, I hit you, oh my God. And he came running up to your car and says, oh my God. Oh, and he's yelling and whatnot. And your 3-year-old self looks at that guy and you go, beards are completely scary. The color red is unsafe. And smelly cologne is somebody that's going to try to kill me. Your brain will make files to help keep you safe, because that's what the animal brain does.
It's imprinted, right?
It's imprinted, but it didn't know that red just happened to be what he was wearing. Red is what came running at you. And so that went in like, okay, no good, no good, no good. So years later, you're on a date, perhaps, and the woman comes in a red dress with too much perfume, and you instantly hate her. You just
Okay.
instantly like, no, she's a horrible person. I don't want anything to do with her. This date is off, because all of your back brain looked at the files of safe and not safe and went, she's loud, she's smelly, she's wearing red, she's not safe.
So we build a profile
Yeah.
somehow.
And it's not based on truth necessarily. I mean, you
And
could touch the stove and you feel that one, and that one's correct. Okay, don't burn, but half your files just happened to be what was going on at the time, and your brain reached for what it could see and called that a problem.
okay. And this is everybody, right?
This is everybody.
Everybody has this to some degree.
This is mammals, really. Animals will do this too,
Okay.
right? You
So,
stick your dog in the laundry room over and over, he'll learn to hate the laundry room and,
okay.
panic through the smell of soap.
So we are all filtering our reality through this
If not
profile.
safe, yeah,
Yeah.
fight or flight, all sympathetic, parasympathetic, all this stuff.
Making judgments on people, what's safe, who's right,
Yeah,
who we should let in, who we shouldn't let in. But it's
right.
actually not real, right? It's just we actually can't know a person through that layer that we've built up, right? We have to
Right.
somehow get over that. And
Yeah. And a lot of it was familiar, unfamiliar. It's familiar and it went well. I like it. It's familiar and it went badly. I don't like it. It's unfamiliar now. That's just scary because I don't know how to categorize it.
foreign accents.
Yeah, foreign accent, smell's a big one. If you eat different spices and you smell funny, your brain will not like that. Sound funny, smell
Wow.
funny, look funny, no good. You're
Wow.
not in the tribe. You're obviously not our tribe.
I mean, I can already start to see why stuff like racism happens, right? Just because it's us here, you're over there, you're different, we don't like you.
Right. So if you grow up in a neighborhood that has, say, Oriental people, but not brown people, you're like, well, Oriental people are okay just because they're familiar.
Yeah.
And if it's vice versa, you're like, oh, brown people are okay, but Oriental people, I don't, it's just what's in your system and how did it go? And we think the brain thinks it's so smart and it's terrible data. It's just what happened to be around. So it's
But it's just
great your children traveling and show them different things or whatnot, so their brain will be more acclimated to a greater range of stuff.
so this is just our brain mapping, taking notes, creating a profile in order to keep this safe, right? Our body.
Right. So
Okay.
if you ate a hot dog before and it didn't kill you, your brain will go, well, all right, we didn't die. Put that in the okay pattern. If you
Okay.
almost choked on it, it's like, oh no, that was bad. I don't want that. It nearly killed me. So it uses the data it can from what happened. So here's karma. This is basic definition of karma. You see what happened, your system will make up a story about it, and then you'll move forward holding that in your system as kind of a permanent data unless you get several other things to counteract it and extinguish it out.
So I could imagine that could roll on even true awakening, right? That
Yeah.
part of our mind is still in there. So that could
Yeah.
take decades, right, to
Decades.
work
Yeah.
that out.
Yeah.
Okay. So this part of Jeffrey's model is what? What did they, is there a ground zero? This is like
So,
what, how does he describe this?
so all of what I've been talking about is basic neurology. So this is how anyone would learn and what you're built up in your fight or flight or whatnot. So Jeffrey's model would start with fundamental well-being. So number one, if you, location one, so the location, the big thing, the overriding, many factors come together, your emotions, your agency, all these different things have a grouping that has a tendency. Location one, if you sit down and calm down and think about it or feel into it or however you do it, is the world perfectly okay just the way it is? Are you fundamentally safe just the way it is in general overall? And so people that 99% are in fight or flight.
Mm.
And no matter how much they try to calm down, no matter how much they breathe, no matter what technique they do, they're still anxious. They're still, looking for that tiger out there. They're still being run by that anxiety, fight or flight. So
So
that's me.
yeah, I have a brother, right? He's a good bit younger than me, right? Very likable character. He'll kill me if he ever knows I'm talking about him on the podcast. But I'm just going to use him as an example, right? Very likable. outgoing. Everybody gets on with him. But when I sit with him, I notice an uneasiness. Like his leg is always tapping. He's looking around. He's checking his phone constantly. And to
Right,
me, that kind of like that's not fundamental well-being, right? On the outside,
right.
he appears to be very happy. You know, his life is going pretty good. He has a lot of fun. He's always out enjoy. But when he's by himself, there's an
So fight,
uneasiness around him.
right. So that fight or flight is the primary experience of life. And it doesn't matter whether you're happy or unhappy, whether you're meeting your goals or not meeting your goals. It's not about what's happening out there. It's about what's happening in here. And is the world your enemy? Something that you need to fight your way through, that you need to always be on guard, or is the world your friend? It's nothing personal. Nobody's out to get you.
Mhm.
Fundamentally, you don't have to know why. Is there a God and not? I don't know why it is, but my felt sense experience of the world, when I don't think of any particular one thing, but whether I like it or not, but in general, yeah, it's okay. It isn't firecrackers and marching bands. It isn't like ecstasy and like, it's like, is the world for me or against me?
And what changes in a person to go from the nervous energy, the world is out to get me, to the world is actually okay? What changes?
Your neurology. Really. So
Okay.
instead of pointing towards what's wrong, instead of pointing towards where's the problem, where's the problem, where's the problem, you're not looking for the bad. And so your brain instead, and here's what is the big thing, we would say in consciousness, that's the actual reality.
Yeah.
It isn't that we pretended it was bad and now we're pretending it's good. The idea behind awakening is that the world actually is good. That's the underpinning of the whole thing. That's the real truth. So
Mm,
you open to that real truth, not the cultural story, not the story from this particular lifetime, but you open to the whole thing. And it's not out to get you. So you just open to what is, what's already there, what always was there, what always will be there, all these things that we say, and you open to that and go, oh, oh, just that. Oh, and it is just that. It's little, simple, subtle. It's okay.
Is that awakening yet or something else?
Jeffrey would call it awakening, and most people wouldn't. So where do you draw the line? Do you draw the line in knowing that the world's on your side? You're still then more than likely location one. Here we are, location one. You need to sit down and do your practice, or take a breath, or clear your mind to find it.
Okay. Okay, so to me that would scream classic Eckhart Tolle, practicing the power of now, right? Being
Yeah.
mindful, watching
Right.
your breath, finding the gaps in between the thoughts, and all of a sudden a portal opens up, right? It's like, oh, you know, oh, I notice now that I'm not trapped in a story, because it's almost like when the mind kicks in and it brings you off on a tread, you get lost in a virtual reality, right? You're just gone. You actually stop witnessing your reality around you. You're gone in the mind. So what you're saying is location one seems to be a practice that you have to do. You have to kind of like bring your center back into the body, calm down, and you're able to find fundamental well-being.
Practice of stopping the mind.
Okay.
That, mind layer is another way of looking at location one, is, you got to get that mind off of the story and off of the problems and off of everything, to realize that you're perfectly okay.
Okay. And tools that people would use, this would be like what the TMers would use, like their mantra, constantly reciting a mantra, keeping that part of their minds busy, mindfulness, breathing techniques, that kind of thing.
So
Okay.
one of the biggest things the research showed, and this is like 10,000 people, 20 years at this point, there's a lot of people. You don't know which one's going to work for any particular individual, but the reason these things have worked for thousands or millions of people is that they work for somebody. So you
Yeah.
try one, you can try the mantra one, you can try cancel, cancel, you can try box breathing. And that's basically the 45 days class is it just gives you one after the next, after the next. So here's a technique. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one until you, and really within about 2 weeks, you don't have to try it for years. Within a couple weeks, you should notice a little better, a little something. Maybe you have this huge transition, it's pretty rare, but you'll notice like, oh, I'm gradually calming down. I see the world as fundamentally okay. It's just that gentle, like, oh, so you try a technique, whatever one you like, or you take the class, whatever, try it every day. So here's also research every day, not just when you're stressed, every day. So you're building a habit. You're saying over and over, this is what we're looking for. This is what I want to do. This is not a short-term experience. This is a long-term identity. So when you drop into a location, it's no longer just a short-term experience, a glimpse, a peak experience. At some point, it switches over into identity. And each time, every time, all the time, 99% of the time, when you sit down and do your technique, you find that not scared place. You're not necessarily finding right bliss and lights and excitement, but you're finding the not scared, not guilty, not mind racing place. I'm gonna say one more
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
Not only do you do it every day, but you do it for at least an hour in a
Okay.
row, not 10 minutes here, there, and elsewhere, 1 hour chunk.
Okay. And could that be just meditation? Is that one of them as well? Just to sit and meditate, right?
Yeah, all the different kinds, all the things you ever heard of that anybody ever brought here, it could be any of them. Just
And
pick
you've just
one.
find
Pick one.
one.
Don't change
Yeah.
it every day. Pick
Okay.
one. Do it for at least a couple weeks. And if you're not noticing anything, pick a different one.
Okay.
If
And
that does a different
what brings people to this stage? Because, and again, I'm just coming back to my experience working with people, right? I
one.
find there are people who what I would call like they long for something, right? They long to come home. And then I have people who are suffering and they just want to put an end to the suffering and and I have family members, right, who I've tried to help. And when things are going bad, they're very interested in what I do, right? They're reaching out all the time, tell me about this, tell me about that. And then all of a sudden the life gets a little bit easier and the suffering stops. And then all of a sudden the practice just disappears for them
Yeah, exactly.
and it drops away.
Yep. So here you have the dual life.
Yeah.
On the one hand, and this is, so I'm a doctor, I'm a therapist. This is what I do majority of the time. People want a better quality human experience. They want better quality. They want less pain. They want communication skills. They want a better relationship. They want to parent better. Whatever realm it is, they want to be more wealthy. They want to look better
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form. I want a better human experience. And when my experience is better, I'm good and I'm going to go and live my life.
Mm.
So it's skill building, it's quality building. I am all for a better quality life. So let
Yeah.
me just like really put that out there. There is no judgment in having a better life.
I agree.
The other side then is awakening. So
Yeah.
you have the calling, you've teed it up in a past life, you've set yourself to suffer so freaking much that you're willing to do anything. I will sit out in the snow wearing a loincloth. I don't freaking care anymore. I am going there. And it doesn't matter what the experience is. I'm called.
Yeah.
I don't care if it kills me. There's that place where you just can't not do it. No matter how hard I tried to not do it, no matter all the distractions or travel or drugs or all the things to not do it, it just keeps coming back. And you just have to. You're destined to awaken. Now, here's the big thing that is what I teach in my class. You don't want awakening to suck with bad health and
Mm.
crappy relationships and bad ethics and be an asshole and living under a bridge. Quality life. It's a good thing. We want the quality life. Build all those habits. Have your, trusted community. Have your dentist. All these different things. So then, when you drop into awakening, a lot of these things are on autopilot, and you can just roll out quality awakened experience. That's my thing.
Okay, so I think I did it that way, right? I think I realized early on in my life, my young adult life, something wasn't working. I was going in the wrong direction. I needed to change. There was a little bit of addiction, and somebody gave me a Louise Hay You Can Heal Your Life book, and I was
Yeah,
like, what? And I was reading, I mean, I was so far away from spirituality, but
yeah,
as soon as this book landed in my hand, I was like, wow. And that just set me off on a working on myself. I started working on the inner child, doing affirmations, all of that kind of stuff, right? And I definitely improved my
yeah,
life, right? I got better. I became a nicer person. I had more, I attracted better people into my life, and started manifesting more prosperity, all of that kind of stuff. And I kept that going. I kept meditating, but I was never a spiritual seeker until I
right.
had an awakening. And then when
Yeah,
I had the awakening, I was like, oh my God, I want more of this. And then
yeah,
I was like called to that. So it
yeah.
seems that I did it that way.
Good.
Yeah.
So in that place, and that's how most of the people who see me is they're doing it that way. And they've put, a solid 10 years into all the
Yeah.
improved stuff. I mean, this is not like I do it for 6 months. This is a chunk. And by the time they see me, it's like, I did all these things and my life is good. And, I have a relationship or kids or started my business or whatever. And they're like, and there's still something's missing, or they're still, I want to take it to the next level and I can't find somebody to take me to the next level. I don't need one more communication style
Yeah.
technique. I don't need one more time management organization thing. I need that aching place is trying to get me somewhere. And that's the awakening.
Okay.
And if
Okay.
somebody hasn't done all of those things, I mean, they can do it still, you never know or whatnot, but when you're called, you're called. I don't think that personally there is really a choice. It's not like one day you decide to awakening. It just happens at some point. And so you do as much as you can to prepare and be ready and clear up all the problems and learn the skills and become that better person. Look at it from Alice Bailey. You're having your first initiation, you're having your second, you're clearing up the physical plane, you're clearing up the emotional plane, all the drama and whatnot, until finally you reach the point that your mind can shift. And that's where it happens, when your mind goes, oh, not that story reality that we need to be separate, dropping that into a more abstract mind, into a more soul place, into a more spiritual place, to go, oh, the energy behind the form. Oh, that which is eternal, not just the momentary story.
Okay. So we've labeled focus one as fundamental
Location.
well-being.
Yep,
Location
location
one,
one.
location one, fundamental well-being, right? We have to kind of find it. We have to close our eyes. Oh, it's there.
Or
I can,
whatever
I
your
can,
technique. Yeah,
yeah.
you got to find your technique. And that's like the key to the whole thing. You find your way.
Okay. Now shifting into location two.
Yep.
What happens in location two?
Now it's front of mind. You know that you know that you know. So I might have something upset me or whatever, but I know that it's going to be okay. I know that the world is a safe place, even though stuff happens that is not so great. Overall, I know that I know that I know, and people are much more relaxed. You can see they could be having a bad moment or whatever, but they're not that way all the time. They're mostly like, oh, that happened. Yeah. And and I have the full range of happy and joy and frustration and anger, and I feel like I have agency to choose life to be better and have that better life within the container that it's all perfectly okay.
Okay, so the container. What is the container? Is it the human form? Is it and at the center of what we are is that like fundamental well-being? And explain that to me, right? The container
Yeah.
and what's there, right? Is it because like for me, when I think of witnessing or when I feel into how witnessing used to be for me, it was something that kind of felt like it was in behind my head, in behind my eyes, looking in on my life.
Yeah. Yeah. So location one, you generally feel like your body's the container, right? And there's something in here looking out,
Yeah.
and it still feels very separate and very individual. Location two, the container shifts to being like vast. There's the vast,
Yeah.
and again, each person different words, mysterious space, like everything's just showing up. Life is the container. Like as far as you can see out there is the container. It isn't, you aren't trapped in this body. There's this mysterious, you don't even necessarily know what it is, but within your awareness, stuff just shows up and it's okay. And you're not making it happen. There's existence showing up, and you have a full range of human experience. You say still you like it or you don't, or you still might be wishing you could control it, but some part of you knows like, I'm not sure if I can control it or not, but it just stuff shows up. It's you start, it's the beginning of that timelessness, and it feels vast and eternal and still human, where you have anger and desires and
Yeah.
all the things.
Okay, so that to me sounds like what the TM movement would call cosmic consciousness. Okay.
That's what I
Oh,
called it too, cosmic. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
self-realization, cosmic consciousness. But for me, that felt like you said the vastness, but it felt like the vastness was inside, right? It was like the witness that was looking out now somehow like pulled itself away from the ego and the human, right? And turned around and noticed itself as vastness, unbounded awareness. But
Okay.
it felt like it was still internal, right? It was still it didn't yet see itself in the outside world.
Okay. So some people have a hybrid experience in that location too, where, okay, I'm seeing the vastness, but I'm seeing it from in here looking out.
Yes.
Other people like, oh, I'm seeing it from like just outside. It isn't in here anymore. Now it's out here. But so it's just, this is a very gradual for some people. Other people, there's this, well, there was this and now all of that's gone. But the majority of people, it's like, well, I see it from here, and now I saw it from here, and then one day I didn't see it from anywhere, and it was all headless way, all connected and everything. And then so it's location two is probably the most variable of all the locations, because the mind doesn't necessarily let go all at once.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so the human, it's kind of like when I don't know if you ever did this as a kid, but I did when you're on a push bike, right? And you cycle really fast and you jump off and the bike continues on down the road for a while, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of what happens with the human after awakening, right? It happens, for me anyway, it happened in an instant. And
Mm.
then there was like still a lot of human stuff, right? There was still some anger that was coming up, jealousy was still there, there was still like a lot of that stuff. But at the center of me, there was a freedom, there was the identification or the attachment with the ego seemed, it was almost like it was the little hinge that connected the two had now been like lifted or pulled apart. And there was just something there, spaciousness that I didn't feel before. It felt like an uncomfortable shoe. I had just kicked off an uncomfortable shoe, and it felt really good. Felt really good. Felt great.
Right.
Yeah.
So this might be a good place to bring in the layers.
Okay.
Okay. So we've got the location where you found fundamental well-being, location one, but you need to sit into it to find it. And we said location one has a lot to do with the mind. The mind is still the thinker, the mind is still the seer, the
Yeah.
mind still feels that there's a body, but the world somehow is okay. Lord knows how.
Okay.
So location two, stuff showing up. Space. Space is one of the classic words for it.
Mm.
Well, mind could be showing up within the space.
Yeah.
So the layer is the experience that you're having in the moment within that bigger container. So within that space, your thinking and your jealousy and your thoughts could show up. That's just what's showing up. Or the space, location two, layer two, two is the space. So you could have the space of the space and it's just empty and vast and your thoughts drop out. And there's that moment where you just 20 minutes went by and you have no idea what happened. It was just space. Or so location three, right? That joy, that love, that fullness or whatnot. So within the space, the smile comes for no reason. There's just the joy of aliveness, which is what's showing up in that moment in that space. Location four, that emptiness, that dropping into existence. So within that space, you can barely talk. Right? The mind is gone, agency's gone. In that moment, you just silent. And so you can have all of these experiences within the location. So say the location's a house, and in each house, there's a mind, there's a library, there's a place you put your bills. It's a place where the calendar is, where you're going to sit down and think about things or whatnot. That can happen in any location where you have to plan something. In each house, there's a meditation room where it's just space. And you can go in there and just have that vastness where you just see what shows up. You know, within each place, there's a kitchen, the heart of the house, where the fun is and the fullness is and the party is, and you have that experience no matter which location. So this is why it gets so confusing, because you can have the experience of anything within all of existence because you exist and it exists, and you can have that glimpse. That's a layer, that's an experience within whatever it is your mind, how it is that it's making sense of the whole thing, whichever house you live in.
Okay. So the bedrock is location two. Would I be right in saying that? So,
Yeah.
and from location two, and I'm just going back. I'm just
Yep.
using my own awakening, right?
Yep.
When I had my awakening, it was like I was fully established in what was known as self-realization, right? But I was now having experiences of that unbounded awareness that was there, like totally peaceful, not anxious, but aware of the human, right? But now it was looking out through my eyes and it was seeing itself. It was like, oh, I am the sunset. I am the trees, right? It was seeing somehow there's a recognition, and the feedback that was coming back in through the eyes was like a bliss, a feedback of bliss and joy, and the heart was coming online. But it was like it would open up and it would close down. but
Mhm.
the baseline was always self-realization, or what you call location two, right? So it, it's not linear, but it's like that's where you're kind of operating from, and then other locations can open up.
Right. So some people are very fixed and anchored and narrow, and they do location one, layer one, location two, layer two, location three, layer three, location four, layer, and it's very solid and it makes a lot of sense. Most of the people I talk to, maybe they had paranormal experiences as a child. Maybe you've already unhinged some of those things like, I am not my body.
Mm,
Maybe you're going to astral project out into the cosmos and see God through your eyes, which is a
yeah.
location 8, and bring
Okay.
it back in. So within that container of location 2, if you are a fluid person, if you have paranormal skills, if you have people around you that are doing these different things, so your mind goes, hey, let's give it a try, you could do a layer 8 in location 2. That's what's showing up. And it's fleeting, and these things come and go, and you have the wild hour or the big dream where all these things happen. Location 2 is a really huge range where people, particularly people who have psychic skills and paranormal things happening, can just really be very hyper fluid.
Okay, so I had that, right?
Yeah.
When I had gone through the awakening, but I was still able to meditate and connect to an intelligence that would, any question I would ask it, it would come in and explain it. So it would
Yeah.
even explain the stages of awakening. It would say, this is what you're experiencing, this is you looking out through your eyes, and this is all of that stuff would come in, and it was really helpful.
Yeah.
And you know, there was like a, oh, and maybe we should talk about this as well. The nervous system. How does the nervous system play a role in all of this, right? For
Yeah.
because obviously the nervous system has to upgrade for these later stages of awakening
Yeah.
to be experienced through our physiology.
Yep. So this is where, having had 10 years of cleaning up your diet and having better relationships so that your nervous system is more co-regulated with the people around you and you're not in fight or flight, really, really helps. So you're a person who had the previous paranormal experiences. So
Yeah.
you had the skill to be able to go farther. Most people wouldn't do all that in location 2. You
Okay.
did, I did, we get it. But
Yeah.
we had 20 years of paranormal experiences going into it.
Yeah.
So it was an unconscious competency. I had 10 years of body work, reflexology and network chiropractic and shiatsu and colonics and vitamins and all the funny diets of all the different things. So my nervous system can regulate. I have a lot of regulation skills, a lot of breathwork skills, a lot of being able to do the meditation of muscle by muscle relaxing. I had all this psychic development of grounding and rituals and setting my space and setting my intention. All of that was just built into the system. As I started going into higher locations, that was all a given. Other people, and I had some of this too, they're going to get headaches. They
Yeah.
want to eat. They don't want to eat. They're hot. They're cold. The Kundalini is going crazy. Well, having had that most of my life, I have a lot of tolerance for that. I didn't panic. I can put a cold pack on my head and a hot pack on my belly because different things are doing different things at the same time. And I could just roll that out. That's what I do for a living. So I roll that out all day, every day, no problem, which is really helpful to sustain higher locations, to be able to go instead of the glimpse that maybe takes you months to integrate. It becomes your new normal, or it happens for hours a day, day after day. And a system that is hyper fluid is either really adaptable, or their highs are high and the lows are low and people are crashing over and over again. They're getting sick over and over again. they're having a hard time working or remembering things or whatnot. Shoring up your nervous system is key. Having a healthy lifestyle, whatever diet that may be for you. I eat a lot of meat. I tried the vegetarian thing, did not work. I'm like freaking paleo. I eat tons of meat and vegetables. It's very grounding. I have rocks. I have rocks all over with grounding things in.
Yeah.
So I have all these things are already there in my environment.
And these things can change, right? Because when I was going through my awakening, I spoke about meditating and connecting with an intelligence and it telling me everything I need to do. And early on, it told me, and it came in like really strange, really specific. It told me all about the Kundalini and the pools in my spine, and it told me it's like you're going to work. Your work at the moment is not your true work. Your true work is working with the energy in the spine. I was like, chiropractor? What I mean, I didn't know what Kundalini was really at the time. And then it told me that I needed to stop eating meat. I was a big meat eater, and it goes, you need to stop eating meat. You need to become vegan, right? So the
Ah,
next day I went vegan. I was vegan for 3 years.
yeah,
Going through my awakening, it was like there was lots of different things. There was like Native American sweat lodge came up,
yeah,
ice baths. I got an ice bath for myself. I was doing that. I was doing shaking. Nobody told me what to do. Pranayama, doing yoga. All of these things just sort of naturally turned up. I was vegan for 3 years. Then I went vegetarian. I was vegetarian for another 4 or 5 years on top of that. And then this year I started back eating meat and eating
right.
lots of it. Just something came in. It was like, okay, you need meat
Yeah.
now.
When I was in chiropractic school, I became vegetarian. Was that for a few years or whatever? By the end, I became vegan. I tried raw food. That was really hard. Couldn't quite manage that. But I had this whole progression, and then I got pregnant, and all I ate was meat. That
Yeah.
was the start. It was like, bam, one day I'm
And
vegan, one day I'm eating,
yeah, and I,
steak.
I even did a breatharian initiation where I didn't eat solid food for 3 months and lost about 42 pounds or something. And
Yeah,
that was part of it as well. It was just
yeah.
that was something I had to go through. And it was, yeah,
I
refining the
tried it.
nervous system. Yeah, you did it as well?
And not a whole formal one, but yeah, was eating less and less and less and down to like tea with milk and honey and for about 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The crazy
Yeah.
things we do, right?
Well, yeah. And so it sometimes makes sense at the time and it's helpful to have someone making sure so people they cook for me now. They're like, we're making sure you're staying alive. I'm like, that's excellent. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So sometimes it goes a little too far and kind of needs to be reined in. And I mean, this is the fluidity, where you go, what location is that? And it's the journey. And thus people have 10, 20. This is 10, 20, 30 years for most of us that are really, and for you and I, this is a career also.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whether it's you call it the rain cloud of noble things or the Akashic records or your higher self channeling in some way, shape, or form, some people get a lot of downloads. There's that fire hose
Yeah.
that comes in, and this is your calling as a career in addition to the calling for awakening.
Mm.
Most people don't have that. That's so when people are looking for that big experience because they've heard the speaker say, yeah, I remember my past lives. Yeah, I did this breatharian thing. Yeah, most people don't do this. Is absolutely not required for
Yeah.
awakening. It's not expected and it's not most people's calling. And it's kind of it's people go like, oh, that sounds great. And I'm like, then you never talk to an angel because it's really not great. It's really, really not great. So it's it sounds way more fun than it is. It's very grueling. It's very brutal, a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. And your system gets churned, right? It feels like you're in a washing machine just going around and around when all
Yeah.
this is going on. And it's not
Yeah.
fun. I mean, if
It's
you
not
sit and
fun at all.
tell someone about it, they go, oh, wow, I want that experience. But it's like you're being put through the ringer. And what we're just speaking about, like people, there's no prescription. We're not prescribing, we're not saying you have to stop eating meat or you have to eat meat. It's kind of like as you're going through it, you should be able to go inwards and feel what's needed for your system, right?
Well, there are 8 billion people on the planet for a reason. So you could just go in and have self-knowing, maybe, cool, and that might be your path. And maybe you need to talk to one of these other people. Maybe you need a nutritionist. Maybe you need a psychic, person to help you. There's a lot of paths. So I can't even say you should be able to go in and decide, but there is a flow where things are showing up. So maybe the diet shows up, maybe a nutritionist shows up, maybe a book shows up,
Yeah.
maybe this podcast shows up where you're like, oh wow, I was
Yeah.
thinking about that, and now I see what's happening. To get the animal brain on board and to have passion for what you're doing and to have the mind having some understanding, to have congruence is really nice. And those of us that kind of floundered through the path, I think part of the reason it was so wrenching and so much like being in the washing machine is because we'd smash against one wall and then you'd kind of try something else for a while and you'd smash against another wall. And there we were, in the wind, just flipping around and seeing things come up. Having some guidance, it doesn't have to be that hard anymore. So we
Yeah.
have more and more teachers and we have more and more podcasts so people don't have to bash against the rocks quite so badly.
Okay. And people, I mean, as well, they can muscle test food, right? They can hold a pendulum up over certain foods, to get an idea of what their body wants or
Yeah, I do well with pendulums. I don't do well with muscle testing. So I learned that. I tried, muscle test, tried to do this whole thing. Tarot cards, are they all upright or are they upside down? So you have all the different things that you can try. And ultimately, you don't know if you're going to like what you get.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right? So just because all the cards turned upright or just because the pendulum was swinging wildly and yes, doesn't mean that it's going to be the easier path. It's the correct. There's a right action, right timing, right everything. But,
Yeah. I'm laughing because when I was given that information, I had spent 10 years. I was in the fitness industry and I had a business built around nutrition and I had been in the gym and then all of a sudden I was told you need to go vegan. I was like, "Oh my God," like but I just did it. I was like, "Right, I'm just doing it." That's what came up. Okay, we've got a little bit sidetracked. Let's get back to location 4.
so location 4 is what a lot of people, so locations 3 and 4 are opposite of each other. And they're what people think of most of the time when they think awakening.
Okay.
So location 3, you have the joy, you have the love, you have the fullness, just like the gratitude for life. And it's, yeah,
Heart-centered. Okay.
yeah, it's heart-centered and it's impersonal and you love everyone and the mind isn't trying to judge things. It's just great. Okay. People love location. A lot of people, that's what they're looking for. I want that. I want that
Okay.
heart-centered love. Location 4 is what the other people are going for. It's very quiet. Maybe think of it as Zen, clear blue sky, stillness, silence, just this. Okay.
Okay. So I'm now trying to bridge that with my model, right? Is that what they would refer to as unity consciousness? The subject object collapse, the
Right.
boundaries disappear, more
Yep.
silence,
Time is gone, space
time
is
is gone. Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
Right. The world is just is, it's flat. It's it's very, you can lose a lot of the affect in your face where they're just, right. Unity is a good word for it. It's just. There's
Okay.
not a lot of words. Stillness, silence, existence tend to be the words people would use the most.
Okay. So in my going through my awakening, right, there was two very defining shifts in consciousness that were like something happened, right? The
Yeah.
first awakening was I made some sort of an inquiry, right? I made a statement within my head, and then it was like something just went, pew. It was like two pieces of Velcro ripped, and reality rushed in, or reality woke up to itself. In the shift into unity, I was meditating, and I saw a coffee mug, right? And immediately I looked at the coffee mug and I was like, oh, the coffee mug is the container that holds my consciousness, right? And I was like, oh, and then I saw it being tapped against prison bars, and I was like, and the prison bars is me being imprisoned, right? And
Hmm.
it tapped one, two, three, and on the third tap, the coffee mug shattered, right? And as it shattered, there was an explosion of white light inside of my mind's eye. It went out, like out into the four corners of the universe, right? And everything went bright white, and then it imploded back in, and it came back in, and it was like the universe came back in, sucked back in on itself, imploded back in, and then everything just went still, like
Yeah.
super, super still. And it felt like the center of what I am blew out the edges, the container of me. So it was like subject and the object became one. There was like no separateness in between me and what was outside. I felt like I now expanded beyond my body into my surroundings. And I noticed that my mind got really, really, really still, really
Yeah.
quiet. I could just sit there with no thoughts if I wanted to.
Right. So I could sit for hours with no thought.
Yes.
You're like, oh my God, how did it get to be this time? But time doesn't really exist. You don't, motivation really drops out, opinion drops out, emotion drops out. You might have like a moment of curiosity when the doorbell rings. It's like a little fleeting wind, and that's it. It's not, there's no real you to even have an emotion or a thought. It's the first place where some people, the humanity is really dropped out. So some people feel really alien. I felt really cosmic. I didn't expect to feel like a human in the first place, so it didn't bother me. Some people get really freaked out by it and come tumbling back because it tends to be the first really big, oh, this is not this, I'm gone. Just,
Mm.
and yet when you go to higher locations from that, if you do, and you come back, you realize how much me is still there. But when you're going up the first time, if you go linear, which you might not, but if you drop into this one, this is like, wow, the me is gone. There's, but you don't realize how much there's a me feeling that you're gone. Unless you do the later, like a location 7 is a next rung up in this very, very absolute stillness. You think location 4 is really still the first time. And then if you do a location 7, it's right, it's a very absolute. 4 is still, 7 is non-existent. You're just there's nothing to move.
Okay. Okay.
And so say this is part of why it's so confusing to talk about, because when you're doing it for the first time, especially if you haven't had a bunch of paranormal experiences, whatnot, it's absolute. It's total stillness, and there's no me, and it's non-dual, and you're just complete. This is it. This is the end of the path. And then 2 years later, when you do, well, there's still, and there's really still, and then there's absolute still, and
Mm.
you compare and contrast. It's just very it depends on what you're comparing it to.
Yeah. So I had a person that I worked with who shifted into what I call unity consciousness. And they weren't impressed with it. They were really upset. They got really angry. They had this idea of the human was going to get something out of this. There was going to be a better version of them, a
Yeah,
more complete version. And now all of a sudden, the center had fallen away. All of their human stuff came up for
yeah,
them in this moment, right? Because there was some mechanism that was keeping all of this crap pushed underneath the rug, and that seemed to, and now
Yep.
all the human stuff came up because there was
It's
nothing
in your
keeping it
face,
down.
and
It's in your
there's
face.
nothing hiding it from you anymore. You start
So
really seeing the reality of your skills and your not skills, or what happened and stuff you tolerated, and your codependence or your addiction, all these different things. You can go like, oh shit.
and
Yeah, it
Karen,
happened.
also, I'm just trying to get through to people, right? That just because they're going through these awakening, right, it doesn't make you a perfect person overnight, right?
There's no such thing as a perfect person. So
But
even
people have an idea of that, right? They
they do,
really
right.
think,
So there we're back to the dual life. People are wanting a better quality experience. And they're hoping that awakening is that better quality. I'm going to have a really loving relationship, and it's going to be the best sex ever, and money's going to pour in. I'm going to work a 4-hour work week, and I'm going to be a millionaire, and I could pick the lottery numbers. And right. So these are the things that, maybe our little inner child hopes.
yeah.
Well, I hope if I do this, so it's the same thing. If I graduate from college, then I'm set. If I buy my own house, then I'm set. If I have kids, then I'm set. If I get awakened, then I'm set. If I get to higher location, then it's the same better quality thinking. It's the mind assuming that it could figure out just the right thing. That's the magic key to it all.
Hmm. So this is kind of reminding me to when I was in retail and I had an e-commerce website, and it was almost like everything we'd bring in was like the newer version, right? It was like
Yeah.
the, oh,
New and
this year
improved.
new and improved, right? Flashy label, and people fell for it every time. Uh,
Yeah.
and it seems that we do this with awakening, right? And maybe even
It's the same
teachers
grasp.
do this to
It's the
to
exact same grasping.
so yeah, so I'm kind of now even seeing, right, that there's a whole dynamic between the student teacher, right? The teacher is promising this state and that state and the next day, and then the students going, I want that, I want the next one, that's going to make me better. And so it's like
So what I say in my class is there are different pros and cons to each location. There is no perfect person. There is no perfect state. There is no best one that everybody's going to like. Frankly, some people really like the fullness. Some people find it really overwhelming and really, God, loving all the time. And it's just like, some people really like the quiet stillness. Some people feel that's a waste of life. Why are you here if you're just kind of sitting there in peace? But sit there for 6 hours, sit there for 30 days. What are you doing? What are you doing? So you like what you like, what you like. And that's somehow built in, whether it's the karma or your DNA, or I don't know where it comes from, but people like one better than another, and you don't necessarily get to choose. And most people will expand out into fullness for some period of time, 6 hours, 6 years, who knows, 15 minutes. And then it goes away. It's impermanent. And you get some emptiness, and you get some fullness. Full of what? Full of love, full of light, full of karma, full of all the things you did wrong in the world, full of God, full of connection. It could be full of anything. And then, we chill out. It's kind of like a palate cleanser. Things drop away, drop away, drop away. And so if we're grasping and going, where to go, where to go, I want it back, then you're still on that same wheel. You're like, okay, different things show up. And sometimes the emptiness is this really scary, absolute non-existent. There's no one, nothing, never will be, never was, slap in the face. And sometimes it's more and more is exquisite peace where there's just, you know, a big hug from God, and
mm,
that's everything.
mm.
So over 20 years, I've had a lot of different somethings, and I imagine it will continue.
Yeah, that's what I see as well, right? It's like the shifts can happen and then it can take months and years
Yeah,
for you to unpack that and to refine your perception of that awakening and
yeah,
and for the human to refine, right? Because it seems that the awakening or consciousness can know itself, right,
yeah.
through lots of different degrees and eventually kind of maybe even just know itself ultimately. Like it's like it finally knows what it is, but then we come back to the human, the being, and it seems like that is endless. There's endless refinement of like how we can be more loving, how we can, you know, help humanity, work with others.
Exactly. So you start out with your 10 or 20 years of having a better quality life and gaining skills and making amends and fixing your diet and all these things. Somewhere along the line, various types of awakening happens. And some of the words Jeffrey would use is humanity and freedom, which is another, you could think of humanity as the fullness and freedom of the emptiness, possibly, but it sort of depends on what you like. But there's this like, I'm a person and I want to have a contribution. It seems like I should be here for a reason, and I'm dealing with my childhood issues and all these human things. Illness comes up or whatever. Humanity is like, and then freedom, it's like this desire to go and live in a cave, and I don't want anybody and I don't want to do anything. And I
Yeah,
could easily sit for a month in silence and just like freedom from humanity. And you kind of bounce back and forth for a while, and this stuff comes up, and then it goes away, or you don't really care, and stuff comes up. And then for most people, after enough iterations of humanity, freedom, or empty full, they come together, and you have both humanity and freedom. My fullness, I'm filled with emptiness. The empty is full unto itself. The paradoxes start resolving. Am I alive or dead? Is there absolute versus relative? It's this and this and this and. So at some point, the bubble of paradox kind of pops.
mm,
And that absolute unity consciousness or absolute non-duality, where it just all those, and you can spend years in those paradoxes and koans and duality. Is my this or that, or can I change the temperature of my body, can I not? I mean, you can go into all kinds of, do I have to eat or not? All those things come up into polarity, and at some point it's just one thing, and that's pretty deep. That's pretty
yeah.
deep.
Yeah, so I'm noticing that kind of oscillating back and forward, right? I'm an introvert by nature, and yet I've been pushed into the role of, doing public speaking, standing in front of groups of people, running retreats, being very much hands-on with people and dealing with them. And I've been that, and people say, you're not an introvert. There's no way. I've seen you on retreat. You're so great with people. But honestly, then, like when I'm not on a retreat, I'm put a cap on when I go out. Don't want to see any neighbors. Put my head down.
Yeah.
And recently, I've had this sort of like the pendulum has swung to the point where I needed to put boundaries up because I noticed that I was too open to people, too readily available, and people just want more and more and more. And I had to kind of put something up. So there was definitely went from being very much wanting to be there, wanting to help to, oh, hang on, this is now a little bit uncomfortable. I need to move to this side a bit.
You
And
get over full, and
yeah,
it's time to, thin it down, and then it's like, oh, I really do need to answer some of these emails or something, finding that
yeah.
middle ground where it's functional. So functional, when you have those skills, a dual life, and you have that awakening, it has to be functional or something's gonna become a problem.
Yeah, it's almost like you could see how people would just go, I'm not doing this anymore.
Right.
I give up. It's just too much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then it gets really, really empty. And then somehow you end up getting pulled, but somebody comes to your cave and you're like, all right, fine.
yeah, yeah,
Climbed all the way up here. I guess I'll talk to you. And then the next thing you know, you're like, well, I could do one podcast, I suppose. And then the fullness sneaks in.
yeah. yeah, it's a funny one. I think, and I also think that like there's like when you start teaching, people automatically assume that you're a perfect, balanced human. There's, like angels sing and
Right. Yeah, you balance on the head of a pin and right, that
yeah,
all your quality, right? That's that dual life, that all you have all the skills and all the qualities and all the health and right. God forbid you should get sick. People are so disappointed. Or you have a fight with your teenage kid or something like that. I'm like, no, these things happen. This
or
is
they
life.
hear you mention I eat burgers.
Oh yeah, bacon cheeseburgers.
All of a
Yeah,
sudden, oh, but you're a teacher. You shouldn't be eating meat, or you shouldn't be doing this, or
yeah,
so I kind of, yeah, I could kind of see the projection that people kind of can put on, and that can be quite a lot too for someone.
yeah,
I have to say, recently I was kind of like, oh man, I wouldn't wish a teacher on my worst enemy.
yeah. The worst part for me is that nobody can agree. So you've got the one person who says, well, you really should have a relationship. You should be in a loving, romantic, sexual, successful, best relationship ever. And then you have other people like, no, you should be celibate. You need to be, just unto yourself. You don't need anyone else. And so no matter what you do, someone doesn't like it. And that was the one that's hard for me. No matter what you do, somebody's complaining. Like,
I,
could I not be perfect? Apparently not, no matter what happens. So even if you have one, even if you have the best relationship on the planet, somebody else is going to criticize you because you have one at all. So it's like,
yeah.
just no win. There is no win in this whole thing.
I heard one, you know what an avatar is, right? The avatars.
Yeah,
So I
the
heard one story of one avatar telling their followers to burn photographs of the other avatar. It's like really, do avatars get jealous of other? So it's like, yeah. Or I heard of like one, who gets angry and shouts and screams, and then
and then is the full range okay? Is that what the person needs? So then you go into that whole right avatar guru relationship where it's like, well, if you don't listen until I yell at you, I'll yell at you. If that's what it takes for you to listen, okay, I'll yell at you. Well, is that abusive or is that what you really needed? Is that, coming from a loving, and there's the
it's all of
confusion,
it, right?
all
It
of
can
it.
be all of it.
It could be any of that. And you kind of just have to see is this working for me? Is this actually, you give it a couple weeks, right? It's back to the same thing, just like a technique. Give it a try, give it an honest try a few times. Is this actually working or not? Because there's something for everyone. Some people, my kid's dad, he grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and they yell a lot
Yeah,
just to say
yeah,
hello. If
yeah.
you aren't speaking in volume, they don't think you care. So if no teacher never yelled at them, they would just never hear it. Okay, okay, you know.
And then you get someone who comes from a
We're
community
in the
where people speak really quiet, right?
Midwest.
And
I
they're
grew up
around
in the
people.
Midwest, right? Nobody swears. We're all very polite. You don't wave your hands while you're talking. I learned that now I wave my hands when I talk, but the whole rest of my family, it would be quite calm. And you need to excuse yourself if your emotions are coming up, to collect yourself and then come back. It's all very much like a library. And that's just normal. So this is back to the wiring of the animal. What's normal is normal. If a beard in red is going to freak you out, if yelling and waving your hands going to freak you out, or does it make you feel connected? Like this is your tribe. Whatever wiring you have is what you have.
So you turn up and the guru has a red sweater and a beard and he
Yeah.
shouts, he's really loud,
Yeah.
he's gonna trigger something in you, right? So it's all of it. It's necessary and it's abusive and it's everything in between.
And if you want to heal that trigger, you've got to be triggered. To face the red beard in a gentle way, not too much, not too little. You don't want to completely freak out your nervous system, but if you don't ever push that trigger button, if you make everyone around you not wear red, you're just going to walk around with that button. So maybe it is abusive and you needed that to get the button pushed and then get the hell out of there. Like you don't have to stay and continue to be so there's that as well. When do you
Or
leave?
or they disappear, right?
Yeah.
Because when I was younger, I went into business with a guy, the business partner, and
Mm,
he was everything that I wasn't. He was like
yeah.
abusive, he was loud, he was angry, and I was like, what am I doing working with this person, right? And I hated working with him. And then I worked on me and
Yeah.
he disappeared forever. He never turned back up in my life in any
Yeah.
shape or form.
Yeah. And this is why the path is hard, because insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting it's going to change. And courage is doing, determination is doing the same thing over and over until it does actually change. And you don't know. You don't know which it's going to be in any given situation.
Mm.
And people think, well, when I get to a higher location, then I'll just know. Then I'll just know. No, you don't. No, you don't.
You
You
don't know
still,
anything.
you don't know anything. Yeah, you know less.
You know less.
Right. I know I'm here now. That's what I know. I know that the time is going. We've talked for a long time.
We have talked for a long time. I think you're going to be the first person to do a part three, Karen.
Oh, surprising.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we leave it at this, right? And maybe we can come back
We
and
leave it at
do
we don't know anything. That's probably a good end. We don't know.
we don't know anything. You shouldn't even watch this episode.
Well, if you watch to this point, you already know we don't know anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we've just done 90 minutes. So I never really go over 90 minutes on an episode. So maybe we'll come back. I don't know. Where did we get to? Unity consciousness, location 4? We didn't really
Yeah.
go beyond that. I think that's what we got to in the first one.
Well, and locations 1 through 4 is what Jeffrey covers in his book, The Finders. It's
Yes.
covered in the class. It's the normal stuff. And that's primarily what he talks about on his website and his YouTube and everything. Once you hit location 5, just briefly, that's where you thought you left humanity in location 4, right? So
Yeah.
this is an example when you're going up. And in location 5 is where people really begin to experience some kind of paranormal lights, auras, sparkles, rainbows. You're genuinely having not just I close my eyes and see the light, I open my eyes and the world that got glowing. So some of that stuff where you're saying that bright light and zoom out and zoom in, that was probably some location 5 stuff that came in, or layer 5, where it was just having a moment of it.
Okay. So we'll title this one location 1 to 4.
Yeah.
And we'll decide if we want to come back and do the later ones.
Yeah.
I'm away on retreat next week. I'll be gone for about 9 days, and then I'll reach out to you and we can
Yeah.
talk about
Cool.
doing
So
that.
if people have questions, they can tell you and you can ask them, and what do they want to
Yeah,
hear?
or if they put them down below and we can address them in the next meeting.
Yep. And if they want to sign up on my website, they can go
Yeah.
and sign up for sessions with me as well.
Yeah, and I'll put links down to all of Karen's website. And what's the other one you mentioned? Because where you have your membership thing.
Networkwellnessofboulder.com.
No, you had another kind of an app or something, or began with a K.
Kajabi, my
Kajabi. Actually, that
Kajabi, yeah.
popped up on my phone the other day, and I was looking at it. I was like, "This
Yeah.
is what Karen was talking about."
It's a whole classroom thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Classroom. Yeah.
yeah. Brilliant. Okay, I will wrap up with that, Karen. Thank you so much again.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
to everybody, the viewers
Wonderful
and
fun.
listeners.
We could just talk forever. We
Oh,
should do it sometime. That could be fun.
this has been a lot of fun. Okay, guys, thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye.
This has been the Endless Possibilities Podcast, where the journey of spiritual awakening and energy healing unfolds. Garrett is a lifelong seeker of truth, a spiritual teacher and author, and it's his passion to delve into the profound world of consciousness. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten something from it. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, the podcast is available on YouTube and all the major podcasting platforms. Find us on Instagram at _mother_force. Take care, and we'll see you soon on the Endless Possibilities Podcast.